Good. Good.
Hey, there you are. Can you
Yeah.
hear me just fine?
Yes. And you hear me too?
I hear you just fine. You sound fantastic.
Good.
Excellent. So, first of all, it's a very big honor to have a few minutes of your time, and I really I wanted to express that just to get started. So, thank you very much for giving some of your time. I want I like a math teacher, a high school math teacher. I tell my kids to do their homework, so of course I had to do some of my own homework.
Yes.
And I watched some interviews that you gave when you won the, is it the Abel Prize? How do you pronounce that?
Able, yes.
The Abel Prize.
In French, it would be Abel, but
About, yeah. And
Mhm.
I just I was really excited to watch that and see your interactions in that interview. And then I watched uh, the lecture that you gave, the Abel Prize winning lecture, and
Mhm.
I made it 4 minutes before I got confused.
Aha.
I was really proud of myself.
Yeah. There were a number of lectures. Was it the one where it was a number of high school students in the audience also?
No, it was your lecture on the symmetries of algebraic varieties.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So you are born in Belgium.
Yes.
And I found out recently that Belgium is really kind of split into thirds. So there's the Dutch speaking, the German speaking, and you are from the French speaking Belgium areas. Is that right?
Yes. In fact, from Brussels, but Brussels is and was mainly French speaking.
So,
So my father come from Brussels itself, and from my mother I am from some small village in the southern part.
oh, so they're kind of a rural area.
Yes, so I still have some other relatives who are farmers.
Oh, wow. Well, you're speaking to I live in rural Kansas, so farming is very much the livelihood here. Um, so you grew up speaking French. What other
Mhm.
languages have you learned besides English along your journey?
Uh, because it's the other language of Belgium, some Flemish or Dutch, that's the same. Um, I can speak Russian also because my wife is Russian.
Oh, wow.
Mhm.
Excellent.
It's
And
a little painful for the time being, but
so what do you and people, I ask this every time I meet somebody who knows several languages. What language do you think in?
French,
You think in French. So
yes.
are you constantly translating into French and then back into English when we have conversations in English?
No, for at least for English, Fernand, if I read something in English, it's difficult for me to tell afterward whether it was in French or in English,
Oh, okay.
especially if it is math.
Yeah, and and I try and think of math as a language. So when I was doing my undergrad work, my first exploration into analysis and things, we're writing proofs about, calculus. There's a pacing. There's, for any given value that's less than that,
Yes.
there's this line of thinking that you're doing when you're writing these proofs. I read recently, when I was researching a little bit about you, that you basically wrote the language of algebraic geometry, and the way most people write their proofs is in your language of mathematics.
No, the language I use was more invented by my master, Grothendieck.
Yes.
So, of course, I have trained some things, but mainly the basic language in algebraic geometry is now the language which was introduced by Grothendieck.
Oh, wow. So you, I would imagine, give him credit then for a lot of the way that you write your mathematics.
Uh,
Not what
yes,
you're writing so
No,
much.
no, but the way writing, yes. And I must say, it's with him that I learn how to write. I was very lucky that when I first came to his seminar, orator year, the second year, he had a number of people writing his lectures, were writing up, and he had no one for some talk of the previous year. So he asked me, and so I tried to, he gave me some notes, I tried to write, and the first answer, when I presented to him, uh, he told me proof would be complete. You should write only one phase of the paper to leave some space between two lines. So both basic critics of what was written and how to write to be legible and correctable.
Wow.
And then the second version was better.
Excellent. Um, so you've gotten a lot of accolades for your work in mathematics.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the things that you've written about are so far beyond my realm of capability and my students.
Mm-hmm.
But I've wanted to know, um, like currently I'm teaching 14 and 15-year-olds how to factor trinomials or
How
how
to?
to factor trinomials or polynomials,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
and how to solve basic quadratic equations.
Mm-hmm.
Do things like that, which seem pretty remedial to you, to your work, do things like that show up in your work as you're going through and working, or do you see that as just like a group of ideas that are analogous to something else that you're working on?
There are basic ideas which not the case of degree 2, but just now I am looking at things which happen for so-called L function, and there is some quadratic extension, so some kind of numbers, and then the bigger set of number one obtained by adding a root of a second degree equation, or higher degree sometimes also. And then a crucial fact is that what kind of symmetries are between the roots. Like if I look at the equation x square plus 5, sorry, x square minus 5 equals 0, there are two roots, square root of 5 and minus square root of 5. And for some purpose, they are undiscernible. If one look at some identity involving square root of 5 and minus square root of 5, so identity with rational coefficient, if one exchange plus square root and minus square root, the identity remains true. So there is some symmetry between the roots. That's something well understood by Galois, essentially. And so this is something which, so I would say that second degree equation, that's one place when one see Galois theory in action. And Galois theory, that's fundamental to anything I do still now.
Oh, wow. And you have to pardon. He, you're that he was in the 1700s, wasn't he?
18, 18,
18.
18, 1830 about something, and he died very young.
Yeah, that brings me to my next point. Something that's been rattling in my mind. Fermat, um, Évariste Galois, uh,
Mm-hmm.
uh, even Grothendieck. I
Mm-hmm.
I know my English is my pronunciations are horrible. These are all extremely brilliant French mathematicians who
Mhm.
didn't, I don't want to say didn't live up to their potential, but it feels as though some of these, there's almost like a connection between these French mathematicians and having a very short lifespan, where you, on the other hand, not French, Belgian,
Yes,
you have really seen the full potential of your you've been able to reach your full potential. Why do you think it is?
except what I did when I was younger was much more important than what I am still able to do now. I was much more original then.
Are you talking
Um,
about like the Veal conjectures?
yes, those things are definition of mixed out structure or some work about motives. Since 2000, I have done nothing comparable to that. So, and I don't think there is anything special. Abel have a very short life too.
Yeah.
But then Dick, I don't know if one should tell it so small, so short, that it's from the early 50s to early 70s. So that's still 20 years of with extraordinary influence. That's for Grothendieck.
Right.
And some
I'm sorry. Carry on. I didn't mean to interrupt.
and some French mathematicians have a very long career where they were creative for very long time, like Jean-Pierre Serre, that's contemporary, still alive and still somewhat active. He's 90 or
You.
more.
I,
Yes. And in older time, people like Poincaré, Augustin Gauchy had very long. So I don't think there is anything special to nationality.
okay. But I didn't know. I think as mathematicians, we're all supposed to be looking for patterns, right?
Oh, mm-hmm.
And when you see one, you have to explore it. So that was one I needed to explore with you. Um, I've never been corrected by somebody as brilliant as you. And in our email exchange, you corrected me on some names of people in my bracket.
Yes, I was very surprised by the name you were giving. So I checked on Wikipedia, and often they had a string of first name.
Yeah.
You choose the first one, and I don't know why it's not the one use that I am used to be using.
And what I did is I wanted you to know the first thing I did when I got in the office this morning was I made all the corrections that you made. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
if you, I think it's important to listen to those who have a better understanding. So I appreciate you giving me the corrections in that direction to go. So thank you very much.
For the Greek, uh, I think there is a reason that one had from which city, because otherwise it's ambiguous.
Correct.
There are other Thales, for instance, that the one we love and like.
Right. Right. uh, and there's something to be said about like having the same name, like a Pappas from two different places. You know,
Mhm.
they they did recycle those. So there's a couple of events in history that I want to get your take on,
Mhm.
because I want to know what you think about them. There's two main events that I think were pretty foundational. One being the fire of Alexandria and the burning of the Library of
Mhm.
Alexandria. What impact do you think the burning of the Library of Alexandria had on mathematical knowledge?
I really cannot tell, but it was in decadence for a long time already. So it make it much worse, but at that time there was not much mathematics going on uh, anyway.
Okay, well, that's fair. The other kind of paradigm shift. I'm sorry, I'm working. This lady's gonna talk. Okay, she's not.
DJ Clay and Noah Matthews, please come to the office.
That's the beauty of working in a high school. You never know. I apologize for that. So the other, I guess, paradigm shift that through reading and my understanding is very surface level. I haven't I don't have a true good history of all these people, but one thing that I see in the patterns that I see is the paradigm shift of of Fermat. No, I apologize, not Fermat. Goodness gracious. Oh, Rene Descartes.
Yes.
Descartes. And this is a basic understanding, but I feel as though Descartes made mathematics far more accessible to people by giving algebra variables and standardizing a lot of the notation that's used, especially at our level here at the high school level. And I don't want to say popularizing the decimal system, but the decimal system was already kind of in use in the 1300s before he came around in the 1400s. So my question to you...
Descartes is 1600, no?
Yes. Yeah, Descartes was in the 1600s. Yeah, no, you're absolutely correct. But I feel like the decimal system was introduced with Fibonacci, or not by Fibonacci, but in the era of Fibonacci in the 1200s.
When you make decimal system, you mean using Arabic numbers. That this system, not instead of Roman numerals.
Correct. The paradigm shift of going from Roman numerals in the mercantile system, from Roman numerals to the decimal system.
But I think a number of notation predate Descartes also. I think the sign plus, and I think also the sign equal, instead due to Viet already, V-E-E-T-E.
Okay, I'll look into it. But then I guess my question is, how do you feel as though Descartes, how do you think that his impact, or what is his impact specifically in the way, I guess, making mathematics more accessible to everyday people?
I would not have thought more accessible. There were not so many people also. I think the main contribution is relating algebra and geometry, Cartesian coordinate, that you can write an equation and then look at the locus of points x, y, where it is satisfied that a circle is given by this kind of equation, a line by this other kind. I think that was fundamental, and it took a while. I'm not sure it was so easy. Like Newton, for instance, I don't think he liked that so much. He preferred to write things geometrically rather than algebraically.
Okay.
So I don't think that for the contemporaries this was so much of a simplification.
Okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
But it was very important that,
absolutely.
It's the beginning, I would say, of algebraic geometry. It started really seriously in the 19th century, but still that was the basis which was needed to make it possible.
And you were in the first 3 minutes that I understood of your symmetries of algebraic varieties lecture. In that you were talking about conic sections and the marriage of those conic sections and algebra. And I in that moment I was wanting to know, are those kind of the so would you consider like conic sections the baby steps into algebraic geometry?
Yes, but I think still things become more interesting and more serious with cubic equations.
Okay.
Because if you have a plane curve given by a cubic polynomial in two variables, the beautiful thing is that if you take 2 points on the curve, you can draw the line through those 2 points. Now this line will hit the curve in 3 points. So this gives you a way to 2 points, you attach a third one. So this gives you an algebraic structure on the set of points of the cubic curve. And this has been really fundamental. Elliptic cubic curves are also called elliptic curves and these occur in elliptic because some related integral appear to know the length of an arc of an ellipse. But of course, for conic sections, one knew a lot already. So it was good to see how the tool of algebra, one could easily recover all those things which one knew already. But then there was essentially not much new to be discovered. But in the 18th century, there were still discovery about conics, like the theorem of Pascal that you even inscribe a hexagon and you look at the intersection of opposite sides, you get 3 points there on one line. So that was new, but there is not much new things in the and he proved it in a geometrical way, not using algebra.
So I had a whole bunch of questions that I really wanted to ask, and I wrote them all down, and I keep thinking none of this really matters. Like I just having this moment with you is super inspiring, and just being able to be around you for this moment has been a blessing for me. One of the things that I wanted to ask you is what about math specifically? What about math excites you still? That excited you when you were learning early. So in your early days, because I watched where you talked about your brother, who was 7 years older than you,
Yes.
And how you learned about negative numbers from a thermostat. And by the time you were 7, you were looking at second-degree polynomials.
Because he told me how to solve them, yes.
Which I mean, I think just watching that, you would credit him with a lot of the the acceleration of your learning of mathematics. But I wonder what excited you in the beginning that still excites you now about mathematics.
One thing I would not say accept, I would say worry, is what does it really mean? One thing I was very interested early on was because I was learning set theory, and there were those paradox early 19th century, like Russell paradox, that and a number of proposals to get rid of the paradox, which were meaning contradiction. I still wonder what we really do when we have a proof that something exists, but that starting from the proof, one is completely unable to exhibit it. This is a very strange situation, I find. this I think it's Hilbert who first introduced such argument where basic theorem like an ideal of polynomials is finitely generated, but the proof gives no way of finding generators. And or also similar finitely generated result. And the immediate feeling of what another mathematician who had worked a lot in a concrete way of those questions was telling, this is not mathematics, this is theology.
Interesting.
I forgot the name of the invariant theorist who says that, but it's still something I think about. What is the meaning of a proof of existence from which we cannot exhibit the object we are considering?
Still, you're kind of, I don't want to say you're dancing around it, but there's almost this idea of, and this goes back to Pythagoras. It's this idea of mathematics and religion, and and like, I mean, even Descartes himself left mathematics for theology. And I mean, Grothendieck, from what I've read, I don't know him personally like you, left mathematics for religious purposes.
No, it was, he was considering in advance of his time that we were going toward an ecological catastrophe, and that it was much more important to work to avoid it than to do mathematics.
Wow. Wow. Did he have conversations with you about leaving mathematics?
And
were you a confidant?
I had some contact with him, but not conversation. I think he was kind of disappointed that I did not follow him.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Interesting. So, I know you're contemplating the meaning of of this, and you're contemplating the meaning of mathematics and what it means to actually prove something to be true. These are questions and contemplations that that Cauchy, Gauss, these guys were what I've read. Now I don't know because clearly there, but from what I've read, they're having these same sort of ideas and contemplations. Do you think that there is some thread between an existential crisis, so to speak, and mathematics? And is there a role of mathematics within our existence?
I think mathematics is more, from a logical point of view, is more removed from our existence now. When the Greeks were doing geometry, for them it was study of the world we live in, trying to put some order to make deduction from a few things to get more. And then starting from 19th or 20th century, there was a clear distinction between, for instance, Euclidean geometry, what we know what we are speaking about and what we say is true, but what we live in a space of Euclidean geometry, that some things to be discussed by experiment is with no influence on the validity of Euclidean geometry. So mathematicians view them now as investigating some well-defined abstract or mental constructions, or but the relation with the world we live in becomes a separate problem which does not belong to mathematics. it's more physics and this distinction is only from the 19th, 20th century, I think.
Okay. Wow. Well, I don't want to steal too much of your time. I really appreciate it. And I cannot thank you enough. So kind of you to join me. I could carry on with you all day, honestly. Your brilliance is very much appreciated. And I just want to thank you one more time.
Welcome.
Yeah, for everything that you've done for me and my students. I'm sure whenever they see this back and they look at it, obviously they're going to have questions of what's happening, but I really appreciate your time.
Welcome.
Yes, thank you, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
Okay, goodbye.
Thank you.